Hi, I'm Stuart from the Norfolk Honey Company and welcome to more beekeeping basics. So welcome back. Today we're going to have a crack at making some mead. We've had a couple of comments in the previous video on beer making that I should have a crack at making some mead, so we're going to try that today. And we're also going to siphon off the beer from the fermenting tank into the keg and prime that ready to settle down and be ready to drink in perhaps a couple of weeks' time. So first off, we need to clean the equipment because I haven't made any homebrew for quite a while. So I'll just show you how I'm going to do that, and then we'll crack on with siphoning the beer into the beer barrel, and then after that we'll have a go at making some mead. Okay, so we're at the sink. I've got the barrel to clean out and also the siphon tubing. This is the cleaner sterilizer that I use, VWP. Just bought it from the local homebrew shop, and it does all manner of different things, but it will clean and sterilize homebrew kit, and I need to leave it to soak for between 5 and 10 minutes. So I'm just going to put some kitchen gloves on because I think this is probably quite a strong cleaner, and then I'll show you what I do with the siphon tube. Okay, so rubber gloves on to protect our hands. This is the old tubing, and I've had this for a number of years now, and it serves me perfectly well. So we've mixed up the solution according to the instructions, and all I do is if you pop one end in to the bottom and hold it there, and then just wind the tubing into the bowl, the water will just flow up the tube and through the inside, and they might just be able to see that it came up through the bottom there. And if I put my thumb over, you can see that there's some cleaning solution in the tube. If this is your first time visiting the channel, you're very welcome. Obviously this is not beekeeping, but it's November, it's cold outside, and here in Norfolk in the UK there's not much to do with the bees, so we're trying to find some other beekeeping related topics that we can share with you and hopefully encourage you to have a go as well. So you can see, maybe you can see there's solution inside there, so I'm just going to leave that to sit now for 10 minutes and give it a clean, and then we can take it out and rinse it. Okay, so this is the beer barrel that I use. It's called a king keg, and as you can see it's in a pretty mucky state at the moment. So I'm just going to rinse it first and give it a bit of a clean up prior to then treating it with the cleaning and sterilising solution. So I want to just try and get rid of all of the muck first. It's been sat outside for a while, but it'll clean up more than adequately, and then it'll be ready and sterile, more importantly, for the new beer to go into. The last thing you want to do when you're making a special homebrew, or any kind of homebrew really, is to put all the effort into making the beer itself and then get to the final stage of putting it into the barrel and find that your barrel is contaminated. So hence all of the cleaning. So I'm going to crack on with this and come back to you once I've given this a good clean down. Okay, so the siphon tubing has been in for about 10 minutes now, so I'm just going to give it a quick rinse under the hot tap just to make sure that all of the solution is off the outside of it. And then in order to clean the siphon tubing internally, all you have to do is to just get the tap running at a slow feed and then just hold the tube under the flow of water, and that will push the water through the tubing and out. So just keep that going for a minute or so just to wash the inside thoroughly so that all of the cleaning solution is out of the tubing. Okay, so that should be sufficient. And then just empty the tubing, give it a shake. So that's the tubing all ready to siphon the beer into the barrel. So the barrel's now been rinsed thoroughly, and what we're going to do now is add some of the cleaner and sterilise it and leave that in the barrel for another 10 minutes to give it a good sterilisation. Barrel has now been soaking for around 10 minutes. I've given it a shake and made sure that all of the solution has got to all parts of the inside of the barrel, so we can now empty this out and then give it a final rinse prior to putting the beer from the fermenting bin into the barrel. So we've cleaned the keg and sterilised that, so the beer barrel's all ready to go. We've sterilised the siphon tubing. We've got the beer here. This has been fermenting for 7 days now, so it's ready to go into the barrel. It's just a case of taking the top off and siphoning it in, so I'll get that started. Hopefully we won't have any disasters, and we'll catch up once the beer is siphoning into the barrel. Okay, so we're going to have a bash at trying to siphon the beer into the barrel. Okay, so we've successfully transferred the beer from the fermenter into the barrel, and the next thing to do is to add 100 grams of sugar, and that will prime the barrel and allow pressure to build and carbon dioxide to form above the beer so it doesn't spoil. So we're just going to add that now. So all that's left now is to pop the top back on and to seal the top. And we can leave that now for 7 days to just prime itself, and then another 7 days for it to settle, and I'll probably put it in the garage to settle. So that's the beer. Let's move on to making some mead. So on to the mead making. This is only the second time that I've ever made mead. I had a bash about 4 or 5 years ago, and to be honest, didn't really know what to expect. So just made the mead, put it away in the garage and completely forgot about it. And I've been out to the garage and found that it's still there and it's crystal clear, and I've just decanted this from the bottle that it was in. This is just a plastic bottle. It looks very similar to those kind of vegetable oil bottles that you find in supermarkets, but I bought this from the local homebrew store for less than £1, I think it was. So I've decanted it out, and I've also poured myself a glass, and I don't know, let's see if we can focus this. It looks really clear. I mean, it's crystal clear. The glass is a bit dirty, but yeah, it's quite impressive. Quite what it tastes like, I don't know, because I'm still struggling from this really awful cold, so I probably won't be able to taste a great deal. That's not bad actually. That's so that's 4 years it's been in the garage, and I'm quite impressed with that. So that's fired me up really to get this next batch going. So it's only a gallon, and it takes about 3 to 4 pounds of honey. And I've got a recipe. There's lots of recipes online. I've got a book, yet another book. Most of my recipes have come from books. So the recipe is quite straightforward. It's from this book, Mead, Making, Exhibiting and Judging by Harry Ritchie's. And I'll pop this in the description below so that you can have a look at it if you want to find some recipes. But as I say, there are lots of recipes available online, and they're all fairly accessible. So the recipe we're going to use is a very simple one. It makes a basic mead, and it includes just honey, water, lemon juice, some strong tea and some yeast nutrient, and then we just mix that together, bring it up to a temperature of around 150 degrees Fahrenheit to kill any wild yeasts in it, and then we cool it down, and the last thing we do is to add the yeast. Okay, so we've got 6 pints of water. I've already added a little bit of leftover honey that I had in a dish to that water, hence the strange colour. This is the yeast nutrient, and that helps the yeast to do its thing. We've got the juice of 1 lemon, we'll just strain that in, and that adds some acidity. 1 teaspoon of the yeast nutrient. Okay, and so 2 tablespoons of strong tea, and that adds tannin to the mixture. And then finally it's the honey, and here we've got approximately 3.5 pounds of honey. So the next thing to do is to warm this through, bring it up to 150 degrees. That's 150 degrees Fahrenheit, and that will kill all the wild yeast that we've got in here. Then we have to let it cool down sufficiently to enable us to add the yeast. So I'm going to warm this up and come back to it just before we put it into the fermenting bin. So while we're just waiting for this to come up to temperature, they suggest that you remove any scum that forms on the surface. So we'll just remove this. Okay, so that's now up to 150. It's actually crept to 152. So we'll take that off the heat. Okay, so that's the mead prepared. We're now going to allow that to cool down, and once it's cooled down sufficiently, we can then add it to the fermenting bin and then add the yeast to it and get the fermentation started. Okay, so the mead has now cooled down sufficiently for us to do the next step. The yeast that I'm using is called Vintner's Harvest, and the type is SN9, which it says is a very good all-round strain for country wines. So that's the yeast that we're using, and this is the point at which I have a bit of a confession to make, because rather stupidly I already made a batch of mead and put it into the fermenting bin, added the yeast, had it all recorded, sat down at the computer and somehow managed to delete the entire batch of recordings. So that's why I've now got a second batch which I've just recorded and that you've seen. So the yeast has already been added to the fermenting bin, which has got 1 gallon of mead already in it, and what I'm going to do now is to just add the second gallon, and I'll just show you what stage the mead is at the moment, because it's starting to ferment, and then I'm just going to top it up with the additional mead mixture that we've just produced. So as you can see, it's already fermenting there in the fermenter in the bin, and we're just going to pour the next batch into this. So that went okay, no disasters with pouring it into the fermenting bin, and we can now safely leave this to ferment away. So we've got the beer in the barrel, and that's now fermenting away in its secondary fermentation, and hopefully that'll be ready to go into the garage in a few days' time. The mead is now in the fermenting bin, and that's going to ferment now. Once it's past the first fermentation, which is quite a vigorous fermentation, I'm going to siphon it off into some of those plastic bottles, and hopefully then it'll take on its secondary fermentation. So yeah, all in all, that seems to be going quite well. Thanks for sticking with me to the end of the video, and if you haven't subscribed, please do. It'd be great to have you along. Please give it a thumbs up and share the video if you've got any friends that you know might be interested. And as the winter progresses, we'll have lots more videos to share. So thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for watching.